In today's show, Deni Avdija misses out on starting the All-Star game, plus the latest rumors as we approach the trade deadline. Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, world? Did you pass first point guard and Trailblazers reporter Mike Richmond? You're listening to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. Thanks for making this show your first listen, coming at you each and every weekday, Monday through Friday. So make it a part of your daily routine. Make it your first listen. Tell your friends to do the same. Locked On Blazers, your team every day. In today's program, All-Star starters announced for the East and the West, except that's not how the All-Star game is going to work. Deni Avdija just misses out on becoming an All-Star starter. Plus, we are approaching the trade deadline. I got have rounded up your latest rumors, some of which even involve the Trailblazers, but all of them to some extent will impact how this team moves forward. Let's start with the All-Star voting. The NBA today released the starters for the All-Star game. So the starters are voted on, all of the players, both the rosters are voted on by East and West. So you got 12 from the East, 12 from the West. You'll move forward and play with 24 players divided into 3 teams, 8 international players and the other 16 from the United States. Is it a very convoluted and stupid system? Absolutely. Does the game itself not matter anymore? Absolutely. It's garbage. Don't watch it. But the honor and the fraternity that comes with making the All-Star team and what it means for your legacy and your chances, how you are remembered and appreciated is incredibly important. I think being named to the team still extremely important. The actual play of this, which is sort of convoluted the way it's going to work going forward, very dumb. Exceedingly stupid. Get it out of here. But the nod nonetheless is important. Deni Avdija just misses out. In the West, you've got Steph Curry, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Luka Doncic, Victor Wembanyama, and Nikola Jokic. In the Eastern Conference, Jalen Brunson, Jaylen Brown, Tyrese Maxey, Cade Cunningham, and Giannis Antetokounmpo. So if you're scoring at home, it's already 5 international players, but Deni Avdija is he's a mortal lock. He's going to make the All-Star team. There is no doubt in my mind. It's not controversial. He'll just make the team. The only thing that was going to hold Deni back was the Blazers' sort of place in the standings once we got here, right? Once their starters were named, you hit this date in January, and it's if the Blazers were, deeper in the standings, or, say they were still 10th in the standings, but they were well below 500, then I'd be yeah, maybe he's right. Then maybe you get fringy, right? But they're at 500. They're just a competitive team, and Deni Avdija has been awesome. The only thing that was possibly going to hold him back was just some team success stuff. He's been statistically incredible. He's helped drag his team to be a straight up a competitive team in a tough Western Conference. He's going to make the All-Star team. The last player to make it in the West was Victor Wembanyama. He beat out Anthony Edwards. They were in a tie, but the tie goes to the fan vote. And speaking of fan vote, Deni finished 5th overall in the fan voting. 5th overall, ahead of Victor Wembanyama, ahead of Adidas signature athlete Anthony Edwards, ahead of first ballot Hall of Famers and best players of their generation Kevin Durant and LeBron James in fan voting. Trust me, if anyone who covers the league understands Deni Avdija's sort of niche but very, very deep popularity, it's me, right? I am exposed to it all the time. I know that he is super popular, right? But I am also aware of the popularity of LeBron and KD, broadly. I think that's pretty cool. Why I didn't really cover the fan voting stuff in the past, because unless you're going to be in the top 3, it's not going to matter. Deni Avdija was 10th in the player voting and 9th in the media voting. He finished just behind Anthony Edwards' 7th most weighted score points, where you get 50% of the score goes to the fan vote and then 25% to player, 25% to media. I will tell you what, NBA players do not take this seriously. Go look at the ballot. Nobody takes it seriously at all. So the reserves will be named on February 1st. We'll learn it in the middle of the afternoon here in Portland, 3 p.m. Eastern time here in Portland. It doesn't matter. He's going to make it. He's going to make it. Like, preemptive congratulations. It would have been really cool. I didn't think he was going to become a starter. It would have been cool if he did, just because to recognize his good year. But he's going to be an all-star. He's having a very special season. He's going to be recognized for it. The way that the rest of this voting works is, again, a little bit stupid. 7 players, like bench players, reserves from each conference will be named. The selections are made by NBA coaches. In my experience, I don't know how Thiago Splitter is going to do it, but it was like in the past, assistants usually. It's like, hey, the coach would maybe have minor input, but you trust your assistant coaches to make your picks. Typically, players get rewarded for winning, but maybe not as much as they do in All NBA. But it's not going to be, the coaches are not going to vote to even out the World versus USA format. The coaches are going to pick 7 players from their conference and nominate them, and then if there is an imbalance, which there probably will be, right? Then Adam Silver will straighten it out by, I don't know, probably adding LeBron James to the U.S. team to balance it, right? I think that's how it ends. Okay, that's the All-Star stuff. Congrats to Deni. Preemptive congrats to Deni. He's going to make it. Well respected this year, right? Like 7th overall in the West in voting. This wasn't like he's deep down in the teens. He's right there in the graphic, right below Anthony Edwards and Victor Wembanyama, who had a tiebreaker to decide the 5th starting spot, and right there in 7th is Deni. Pretty impressive season, well recognized. He will absolutely get the All-Star nod. Congrats. I think the other lock from the West, in my eyes, is Jamal Murray. I think Alperen Şengün is probably a lock too. We'll get a little bit when we get a little bit closer. Maybe we'll look into it. For my money, I think the voting is about right in this one. I probably would have had Anthony Edwards over Steph Curry, but Steph Curry got a lot of love from his peers. He's having a good season, but I would have gone Anthony Edwards over Steph Curry. I think probably I would have had Donovan Mitchell in the East, although it would have been all guards. And I probably would have had him over Giannis just because of availability, but I do think Giannis is having a better season than Donovan Mitchell, so I don't really have a problem with it. Deni Avdija is going to get in. We'll celebrate. I think in the West, Deni, Jamal Murray, and Alperen Şengün are locks to sort of fill out the rest of the international team. We'll see how other things shake out and across the rest of the voting and how they have to balance the rosters after that. Okay, moving on to trades. The trade deadline is February 5th. We're not in the I think this week we'll hit the real deal, trade stuff is heating up in a way that there's tangible discussion. I think we're going to get there, just because as you approach these deadlines, actual conversations really happen, but we have some real reporting, starting with the Trailblazers linked to at least some speculation about the Trailblazers becoming a team that can make moves. And I think now that they're they're have weathered the storm and entering the second half of the season as a team that can look up in the standings and not really have to look back for a variety of reasons. I think they could be active, although I would generally bet against anything major happening. But according to some reporting from Jake Fisher on January 15th in the Stein Line, a newsletter you can subscribe to, Jake is a really good sort of how the sausage gets made reporter. Maybe he doesn't get all the over the finish line breaking news, but does get some good scuttlebutt reporting, and I really appreciate him. But he reported on January 15th that Phoenix and Portland are known to have made centers available for trade. In Phoenix, it's Nick Richards. For the Blazers, Rob Williams is available for trade by the Portland Trailblazers. And the Blazers, for the way that Fisher phrases it, is they could be, quote, sneaky buyers at the deadline, because they have various mid-tier contracts, and I'm quoting, that could be aggregated to go after various players on the market, which has rival executives mentioning these two as teams to monitor. So I think this is more from the outside looking in, based on the way that paragraph is written, is that teams are looking at the Blazers and saying they're kind of competitive. They've got some expiring contracts. These contracts are tradable. They could be a team that actually makes a move because of, they're not hemmed in by the aprons. They're not a tax team right now. They have wiggle room to make actual moves with players that are going to walk as expiring contracts otherwise, and so they could conceivably make some deals, namely the Blazers tradable parts, as mentioned, Rob Williams as well as Matisse Thybulle. Rob making $13.2 million, Thybulle making 11.5. I guess potentially if you're like sort of mid-level money, Chris Murray making, more than the minimum at $3.1 million this year and $5.3 next year. I think that is, because he has money on the books for next season, Chris Murray probably becomes like significantly less tradable, but it's not a ton of money, and he's he has some utility as a defensive player, although I don't think he has any trade value other than his contract maybe lining up. But Williams and Thibault could conceivably be either traded separately or aggregated together, combined together in order to get yourself to $25 million and trade for a player. Speaking of trading for a player, there is more rumblings about interest in Jonathan Kuminga from your Portland Trailblazers. Let's talk about that after the break, because this has come up yet again. Join me in the second segment. We will talk about just that. First, though, I want to tell you that today's show is brought to you by Quo. It's a new year. It's time for new systems. This is the time when a lot of us look at sort of the messier parts of a business if we run one and think there's got to be a better way. And there is. Streamlining your communications is one of the quickest upgrades you can make. That's why today's episode is brought to you by Quo, spelled Q-U-O, the smarter way to run your business communications. Because when your team is reachable, organized, and communicating in one place, you're not just working cleaner, you're creating more opportunities to connect with customers. How Quo works is that your whole team can call and text from an app that works on your phones as well as your computers with one shared business number, so nothing gets missed. Everyone on your team, everyone at your business can see the full conversation thread, which makes replies faster and more personal. And it's no surprise with those type of tools that Quo is the #1 rated business phone system on G2, trusted by more than 90,000 businesses, from solo operators to growing teams. Make this the year where no opportunity and no customer slips away. Try Quo for free, plus get 20% off your first 6 months when you go to quo.com/lockedonnba. That's QUO.com/lockedonnba. Quo, no missed calls, no missed customers. All right, thanks for making this show your first listen. If you truly are living that everyday lifestyle, go make it official. Join the Locked On Everydayer Club. You get an ad-free version of this episode, the audio feed, ad-free, Locked On Blazers with no interruptions, plus access to the members-only Discord and more. Go check the link in the show notes as lockedonblazerspod.supercast.com, or you can find that link just below where you're already listening. All right, let's get into these more trade rumors involving the Trailblazers. It was reported about 3 weeks ago, that by Kevin O'Connor of Yahoo Sports, that the Blazers reportedly had shown interest in Jonathan Kuminga. And then Michael Scotto of Hoops Hype on January 16th reiterated that report. Now, he did not cite Kevin O'Connor first. He just said separately in a sentence I'll read you here, quote, "The Dallas Mavericks and Portland Trailblazers have also been linked with trade interest in Kuminga," league sources told Hoops Hype. It's this time of year, you got to think about a couple things. One, when two independent reporters report this, it either means that the Blazers absolutely have interest in Jonathan Kuminga, absolutely have interest, and he fits the bill, right? He's like a second draft guy who hasn't worked out. The way Deni was, Deni was much better than Kuminga in his final year in Washington. But the way that's let's see if we can make it work with a guy who didn't quite work out there. I think DeAndre Ayton, a guy who again, is maybe obviously he signed a massive contract, but it was he didn't work out there. He was a highly touted player. Let's see if we can make it work. He's kind of Kuminga at least fits the sort of MO of what the Blazers have traded for in the past. So it could be that, right, two independent reporters saying that the Blazers have interest in Jonathan Kuminga means smoke, fire, et cetera, et cetera. They have indeed called the Golden State Warriors about trading for Jonathan Kuminga. He's not my Huckleberry. I don't think. I just don't think he's I don't think he's that good. But if the price is low enough, then maybe it's absolutely worth a flyer. Maybe if turning Rob Williams and Matisse Thybulle into Jonathan Kuminga is possible, then maybe it's just that on its head, on its own is just worth it. It's just worth because those guys were going to walk, and that's absolutely the best player you can trade for. Not dissimilar from trading Anthony Simons for Drew Holiday. It's yeah, maybe that's, not ideal in terms of age and money, but this is the absolute most talent you can acquire. Go for it. And then figure in that type of thing. The other sort of read on this, and I think you got to be fair here, is that there is relatively limited interest in Jonathan Kuminga, and his camp, like his agent, has like a vested interest in having it feel like there's a frothy market for him because like only the Kings are going to trade for Kuminga. And so like there has to be some reporting out there that suggests that other teams, yeah, they might do it. The Trailblazers. So it's like the Trailblazers are being leveraged because like, sure, they've made a call because you make calls on players all the time. It happens like, you know, with everybody in the league, right? What would it take? Okay, kind of get a sense of what your deals would look like. That's just like doing the job. And so like it's a plausible name, but it's mostly being used for leverage. I think that those are the two, in my eyes, the two reads that you can have on this situation. It is either like a thing that is for sure happening or for sure not happening. I mentioned in the past when I'd cover this that like it's hard to, you know, if you're thinking about just like as sort of linking these two ideas together, the Fisher idea of the Blazers could be mid-tier contracts that could be aggregated together to go after various players on the market, those being Rob Williams, Matisse Thybulle, and the Blazers' interest in Kuminga. It's not super easy to have a two-team trade between the Blazers and the Warriors due to the Warriors hard capped at the second apron, unable to take back more money than they send out, and can only go up so high in terms of overall cash coming in, even in a deal that is, you know, whatever, doesn't have them taking back more money. So like it's pretty hard to find a super palatable trade with Rob Williams and Matisse Thybulle for Jonathan Kuminga, specifically because it's finding a deal that includes the Warriors' minimum guys, like any of the guys on the minimum salaries. The math just isn't clean. So, you know, maybe a third team gets involved, or the way to do it is to include Al Horford. Both Horford and Kuminga have player options for next season. Al Horford making about $5.5 million at 38. It wouldn't be the worst thing that you could do, because I think Kuminga's like functional, and if you do trade Rob Williams, you're going to need another center. I guess like how palatable is that to the Warriors? I think is one question, because Horford kind of fits their MO with the shooting and stuff, and Williams very specifically doesn't. Kind of a hard fit with some of their players, but you know, and you know, I guess you could hem and haw over who has to include what kind of draft pick compensation. But if the Blazers are paying draft picks to get Kuminga, they are probably hanging up the phone anyways, so it doesn't matter. I think like the Warriors and Kuminga are headed almost certainly for a breakup. This toxic relationship needs to end, and the Blazers at least make like basic logical sense about a team that could conceivably make a trade. And that's really like, if I had to guess right now, I would imagine the Blazers don't do something minor and trade either Tease or Rob because they can, or the other option is, of course, they do nothing at all. Because why rock the boat? They're pretty productive. There's no real reason to take on more money if they don't have to. And like in general, they haven't been a team that has been hyper aggressive at the trade deadline in years past. Although I think they're in a sort of a different spot right now, where they're, instead of kind of like, you know, they could be more active in trying to improve because they're like just better than they have been in recent seasons. So like, making moves to actually get better in the immediate term would make more sense than they would have in the past. So that's the Blazers rumors. What about everybody else? What other big deals are we going to see? Well, the biggest names on the market remain Ja Morant and Anthony Davis. And there's this little looming problem of the existence of Giannis Antetokounmpo. Let's talk Ja. Let's talk AD, and let's talk Giannis, just clouding the whole dang market. Join me in the third segment. We will do just that. First, though, I want to tell you that today's program is brought to you by TurboTax. Tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax Full Service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert, start to finish, without the stress or the guesswork. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert, either in person or you can connect with them online. They're going to handle everything from W-2s to self-employment forms and work to get you every deduction. You can upload your documents, go about your day, and get updates right in the TurboTax app. It's a huge time saver and gives you real peace of mind knowing an expert is handling it. For a limited time, you can have your taxes done by local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in. If a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year, just file by February 28th. Take taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit TurboTax.com/local to book your appointment today. It's still a pass first point guard. I'm still Mike Richmond. You're still listening to Locked On Blazers. So let's talk about it. I think the biggest names on the market are like the players who play for the Kings, Anthony Davis, Ja Morant, and then hanging over this whole thing is the potential that Giannis Antetokounmpo and the Bucks finally break up. Now, Giannis has been pretty clear going on the record with Sam Amick of The Athletic that he's never, ever going to ask for a trade from the Bucks. It's never going to happen. Hold your breath forever. But his agent might just do it for him, and then Giannis will have a clear conscience, right? Or the Bucks will just stink and finally come to the realization that they have to, and the Bucks have not been very good. Even with Giannis back, they haven't been very good. Maybe it happens. And so, let's get the caveat up first. On January 16th, on ESPN's NBA Countdown, Brian Windhorst, your boy Windy, said that there, quote, there are finished deals on hold and trade progressions on hold because several teams are waiting to see if Giannis Antetokounmpo ultimately asks out of Milwaukee. That's probably what it would take. It's probably what it would take is Giannis, or not Giannis, but his agent asking out for the Bucks to really do it. But they're just messy enough, bad enough they're out of the playoff race in the East. They're 11th in the East. 10 freaking teams play postseason games, and they're not one of them. And they have, one of the best players in the world on the roster. And then a couple days later, Zach Lowe on Amazon Prime's pregame show, this was on January 18th, said the Hawks, Warriors, Lakers, Heat, and Knicks are all considering holding on to their assets for a potential pursuit of Giannis Antetokounmpo now or in the summer. What the hell are the Lakers going to trade? What are the Lakers going to trade? I understand that indeed all of this might cloud it because maybe the Warriors keeping Kuminga's contracts, letting him opt in to that, to that deal, and then to his player option for next season, and then trading him is maybe that's the move, right? Like maybe that is indeed the move because Kuminga's very unlikely to hit free agency next summer and make another $25 million. He was in free agency all of last year and nobody gave him a stinking dime. So if he hits free agency, he'll almost certainly be back there and exercising that player option. So that's hanging over everything. But the deals that could be on hold is that Ja Morant, who recently returned from a 2-week absence to play a very good game in London for the Memphis Grizzlies, and then told reporters afterwards that he's very loyal and wants to be there in Memphis, and he's got a Grizzly tattooed on his back, and if that tells you anything you want to know. But other teams are at least interested. Jake Fisher reported back on January 16th that the Raptors are January 15th, that the Raptors are at least a team to monitor in the Ja Morant situation. And Anthony Chang of the Miami Herald reported on January 14th last week that the Heat and Grizzlies have at least had preliminary discussions on Morant's availability, and Chang reported that while those talks haven't escalated and a deal was, quote, not imminent at the time last week, that there is at least some mild discussions ongoing. The Grizzlies and Ja feel destined for a breakup unless there is just absolutely no market for Ja. I think how light the Trae Young deal was makes flipping Ja Morant for this big package incredibly unlikely. Even if he's right now has higher highs than maybe Trae does. Morant comes with enough concerns in terms of off-court stupidity and just physical availability to go with maybe a declining athleticism as he gets older. Maybe there isn't much of a market for smaller guards paid that much money with some real risk. And I think maybe Memphis just says, who cares? That's not the deal we want to make. And according to Mark Stein of the Stein Line, that's kind of where the Mavericks find themselves with Anthony Davis. They've been, active. Davis is going to have, he has a hand injury. He was considering surgery, but has since decided not to do that. There was a whole hemming and hawing from Shams Charania of ESPN that, Anthony Davis is going to have surgery. Stunner, he's not going to, which seems maybe prematurely reported and then extremely admonished by the Clutch Sports representation for reporting that and then backtracked it. But Stein, who I think has a stronger beat in general on both how journalism works and the Dallas Mavericks, he'd previously reported that whoever trades for Anthony Davis he's extension eligible ahead of next season, and he wants a new long contract. And Shams Charania and Tim McMahon of ESPN reported the same thing in ESPN on January 13th. Again, not giving him credit because we've moved beyond the era of of Mark Stein first. In journalism, it sucks. It's not how it works anymore. Everyone just reports their own sources, even if they're repeating something that's already been public. I hate it. But Stein reports that the Mavericks, they're active in trade conversations. They're trying to find a deal for Davis, and there's at least been a few teams that are interested. But the Mavs are telling teams in the way that I assume that the Grizzlies could eventually tell teams is that they will trade Anthony Davis this year if in the next couple weeks before February 5th, if they get a deal that's favorable, and if not, they'll just have Anthony Davis be quote unquote available to come back from a hand injury in mid-March, but just not available for the Dallas Mavericks because they just won't bring him back. They'll just say his hand is more hurt. They'll do what is known in our times as losing on purpose, because that's what they're going to do. They're in this place where straight up they should tank and they have an opportunity to do it. And Davis's lack of availability makes it easier. If he were to get traded, I assume that hand injury he'd be ready to go at the end of March. But if he stays in Dallas, I imagine he will not play a game for them for the remainder of the season, and then they will pursue a trade with him in the offseason. And I really think that's where all of this is headed. I really do. I think because of just the way the mechanisms of the league work, is that while big trades certainly can happen and did happen to some extent last year, if you see Jimmy Butler, etc., certainly big money and all-star level players, etc., get traded, but these big trades, and particularly in the light, Trae Young is a big name who's getting paid a bunch of money and is a former All-NBA player and All-Star, etc., but just the return on that alone, where it's just the expiring money of CJ McCollum and Corey Kispert. It's not exactly a haul, right? You just kind of got off him you just were able to move off him and find a team that would be willing to pay him. But if teams really going for it, the teams that are trying to win a championship this year, their names really aren't popping up in these big trades for direct trading for stars in the way that maybe they would have in past years. Although usually teams that are championship good don't make that type of shakeup unless they employ LeBron James in the spring of 2018, that one year where he completely rebuilt the Cavs and then dragged the Frankenstein team that he built for something like the seventh time, another Frankenstein team to the finals. Shout out to Rodney Hood and Jordan Clarkson. But I just think the way the CBA works now with the salary matching rules and teams either unwilling to cross over aprons or unable in some situations to cross over a hard cap to the second apron, with either sort of de facto hard caps or a literal hard cap, depending on where you kind of land in the CBA's rules, because they're somewhat confusing and apply differently to different teams based on what they have previously done. So as my voice goes up an octave, but because of the rules and because of sort of the nature of who is available, the kind of the biggest names available, AD, who's had some obviously some big health questions. Ja, who has some availability questions. Domantas Sabonis in Sacramento, who's had some availability questions this year, and maybe some sort of overall ceiling on a team that really types. He's a good player, but can you win how good can you be if he's your starting center? I think those are legitimate questions for Sabonis. All of it is just. I think, and then with all of that, this is sort of just actual mechanisms of the way the league works, and then with the sort of Giannis might get traded hanging over you. So maybe Miami says, why would we trade for Ja Morant when we can put a similar package together to trade for Giannis Antetokounmpo? Or why would Atlanta trade for Anthony Davis if they could be either directly involved in or straight up land Giannis Antetokounmpo this summer? It just I think both how trades are able to be structured, the reality of that, plus coupled with the sort of the looming Giannis stuff, I feel the biggest names, at least as I sit here right now, are relatively unlikely to be traded. I think Jonathan Kuminga is pretty likely to be traded. We shall see, but maybe Chris Paul, remember him, maybe he'll get traded. But I think in general, the biggest fireworks, at least as I sit here right now, seem relatively unlikely just based on sort of, sort of basic logic. Mark Stein reported that the Raptors were at least somewhat intrigued by an Anthony Davis deal. Add the Raptors is somewhat intrigued by Ja Morant and somewhat intrigued by Anthony Davis. Are the Raptors going to be the team to save us and give us some real fireworks? Although take it or leave it. I'm not going to be moved either way if a trade does or does not happen. And for either of those gentlemen, although I do think it's exciting when big players change teams and teams shake it up. But like, I'm curious with how this all works, what type of fireworks we'll see, because if you'll recall, there was all this sort of speculation that right around the draft there was going to be all this a bunch of action, and last year heading to the deadline it was like, oh, there's going to be a bunch of action heading into the deadline, and like you're not hearing those whispers this year, and both times that was sort of widely reported by multiple reporters across the league, it didn't happen, and now we're kind of like, we're in this sort of wait and see period with stuff. Like, I wonder if this is the one that goes the other way against the sort of what is publicly known and publicly reported is this is the year that there's a bunch of deals. Although if I sit here right now, as I'm recording this on Monday evening, you're listening to Tuesday, January 20th show. I'm going to guess that there is not action for the biggest names on the market, but there could potentially be action elsewhere. That is going to do it for today's show. Come back for tomorrow's show. It's what we do 5 days a week, wherever you get podcasts, and also on YouTube. Tell your friends about the show. Tell them about the Everydayer Club. And if you are an Everydayer and you made it this far in the episode, check out the link in the show notes and consider joining. I think if you are someone who listens to the audio every single day, if you truly are an Everydayer, I think it is like a legitimately good deal for you, and it could be worth checking out. So, do that. Tell your friends. Come back for tomorrow's show. I appreciate you listening. I will talk to you soon.